Keir Starmer is running scared of Nigel Farage. His speech at the Scottish Labour Party conference this morning proves it.
A dangerous right-wing politics, even here in Scotland, that will say they are the ones who can tilt politics towards the interests of working people. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain.
And you think you are? He doesn't get it, does he? He thinks that we're all stupid. Keir went on about green energy, which is bankrupting us all, and future jobs that don't currently exist. He thinks that we will blindly follow Nigel Farage, but we're not stupid. What an insult to our intelligence. In my view, he's just jealous because of this.
The leader of the UK Reform Party, who, by the way, did really well in that last election. I've been his friend for a long time, and I wasn't sure, am I supposed to be his friend or not? But it never mattered to me if he did well or not. I always liked him, but it's easier to like him when he got the kind of votes he got. He really took it by storm, and they say he's going to do even better this time. Nigel Farage. Where is Nigel? Thank you, Nigel. Thank you. What a great guy.
Keir Starmer must hate that. Shame on his front bench for their insult about Donald Trump. Nigel Farage responded to the Prime Minister saying, "How dare Starmer talk to us about jobs? Scotland has lost more than 70,000 jobs linked to the North Sea as a result of government net zero policies over the past decade." Let me explain this to you, Keir, in really simple terms without evading the answer by waffling like your lot. Reform UK are ahead of all of you, and that includes the other parties, because you don't listen. You probably won't listen to this, even though I'm actually trying to help you. You're not listening to the people who voted for you. You are hooked on your own ideology, which is incompatible with the real world. Take net zero. We can't afford it, and it doesn't make any sense. Hard-working people who you claim to be helping can't afford heat pumps, electric cars and solar panels, and they definitely can't afford it with the tax burden that you are placing on them. The only ones benefiting are the people who are making this stuff, like your friend Dale Vince. There's no point making people unemployed and then promising them imaginary green jobs in the future. And you're only in this space because of the incompetence of the Tories. They got nothing done. They were a disaster. The infighting and a few scandals here and there, which your party helped blow out of all proportion, although it turns out that your lot are even worse on that score. You and your front bench with freebies, Jazz Athwell, Louise Haigh, Tulip Sadiq, Andrew Gwynn, Rachel Reeves and Jonathan Reynolds. It's only been 7 months, God help us. The Tories were too busy tearing themselves apart from the inside out to even hear, so they didn't listen either. They were too self-obsessed, so we ejected them, handing your party a massive parliamentary majority. But here you are making the same mistake, and so soon on in your term, the majority has gone to your heads, and you're even more tone-deaf to the pensioners, the farmers, your junior minister claiming he's only meeting them to say that he's met them. The arrogance, business, and the list goes on. You're even prepared to give away the Chagos Islands, and that hasn't gone down well globally and damage our relationship with the US.
The United Kingdom's our friend. I went to school there for a while. I love them. And I want to see the Prime Minister do well. But he needs to put down the bong.
Only last week we learned that the architect of the Chagos deal, the ex-PM of Mauritius, was caught with a suitcase full of cash and UK visas and Rolexes. Another scandal. And the latest polling shows that Reform are now ahead of Labour. So Keir Starmer's party are sitting at 25% compared to Nigel Farage's party, who are on 27%. Keir, in your first few months, despite the country going to hell in a handcart, you were globetrotting. Instead of focusing your energy on what Nigel Farage is saying, why don't you just focus on doing a good job for the country by listening to what the people who pay your wages, not that you need the money, are saying? Scrap net zero. Drop the nonsense inheritance tax squeeze on farmers. Stop VAT on private schools. U-turn on the NI hike. And for God's sake, before you try to cosy up to the EU with a youth mobility scheme to bring in even more people to this country, stop the flaming boats. The last thing we need is more migration. Well, you're with me. I'm NanavAkuav. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. In just a few moments, we'll be looking at Sir Keir Starmer's speech, branding Nigel Farage and his Reform UK party as dangerous. Then, in this hour's Great British Debate, the first one, I'm asking, can Labour make UK energy independent? And then, in the second Great British Debate, asking whether the government can afford to pay for free breakfast clubs in school. Seems a bit random. All of that on the way. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. Well, let's see what Stephen Pound has to say about my niggle, former Labour MP. Stephen? Well, we meet again.
Still shaking and quaking. I just feel like I've just been hit by a bus. But congratulations. Well, look, thank you for saying that you're here to help Keir, not to bury him. But let's get a couple of things straight. Wasn't it fascinating in that speech in Scotland? Did he mention the SNP? No. Did he mention the Tories? No. He mentioned reform. And I think that is the reality of modern politics.
He did actually make one little quip about the SNP. I think he did make a quip about them. I can't remember the exact quip he made, but there was one. But yes, go on. Sorry.
But it's interesting that you, when you're one of the most informed political journalists, you can't remember the quip. So obviously didn't.
No, for the SNP. Yeah, I don't. Well, you didn't even think he said anything about them. So at least I remembered that.
It went over my head, but then I've not got a lot on my head to actually just, to constrict it. But I have to say, reform is an interesting place because I think as Donald Trump becomes increasingly deranged, I think all of us accept that some of his latest comments have been pretty left field, then I think reform have a choice to make. Reform have to realise, are they actually part of the British branch of the Republican Party, or are they an independent party on their own? And I think that's the important thing. That Nigel has to actually... Nigel's a pretty astute politician. He knows the score. And hopefully he will actually be able to go a middle path. But when Donald Trump, that speech that you actually quoted, said, am I supposed to like him? I mean, I think that's the tension between Elon Musk, who's made some pretty disparaging comments about Nigel Farage. But look, let's get back to the reality of what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I thought that Keir Starmer's speech actually showed a bit of passion and a bit of emotion.
You sound surprised.
Well, to be honest, in the past, he's been a tad nervous. I mean, we've had 14 years of the Tories. We've come into power. We're terrified of actually messing up. And we've done a few stupid things. Let's not deny it. And so, basically, he's trying to, they'll be carrying the Ming bars across the polished floor trick. So I think that was a bit of passion. Fair play to him for that. But no, you've been around long enough. I mean, for such a young person, you know the reality is that when you're making a party political speech, you've got two things to do. One is energise your grassroots. You've got to actually speak to your own people. You've got to speak to the boys in the band. The other thing is you've got to actually put down the enemy. What Keir was trying to do there is to actually invigorate the grassroots by actually pointing out the threat and the danger. Now, I think he had to try to face both ways. It's very difficult to fight a battle on two fronts. And I think he was doing that today. The reality is that the front that we are fighting the battle on is the one that comes in that sort of pale greeny blue colour.
Yeah, but the problem here, though, is that the things he was saying in his speech, and I listened to the speech, I had a good old listen. I remembered the quip on the SNP, although I don't remember the exact words. But I listened to the speech, and I felt the problem here. He was talking about green jobs for the future, for talking about people who will be losing their jobs, who have lost their jobs. They'll be paid for 18 months, and then, as if that's a good thing. But they don't have a job to go to. And the green jobs, as we well know, that don't currently exist, may never exist, and often go to foreign people from other countries anyway, in those countries. So there's not even any guarantees. Did you not feel that the speech was a little bit hollow? And then he brings in Nigel Farage, which is like, I want to hear what he's doing now. I don't want to hear about the future green jobs or the future this or we want to hear how they're going to tackle the thing with the farmers. The farmers are not happy all over this country. You know, we want to hear about the actual policies that are going on, even though he's in his own party conference where he should have garnering a lot of support from people who will not really argue with him or challenge him. People aren't happy with the Labour Party.
No, please. Let's just deal with one thing at a time. Let's just, actually, disaggregate some of the things you talk. You're talking about green jobs and talking about net zero. Nobody for a minute that we're going to have jobs in extracting North Sea oil and digging coal and all those things that we used to do in the future. We have to actually think about the future. We have to think about the way that the jobs are going to look like in the future. Now, anyone who thinks that net zero is for the birds and it's some sort of fantasy simply isn't looking at the reality of the world today. We are in a climate crisis. You can't deny that. I can't deny. Nobody.
I don't think we are.
Well, I'm sorry. Okay. We can argue about that. But the question is, how do we actually address the issue of energy security? Do we want to be reliable on Putin and Trump, this new duumvirate for the future? No, we must have our own energy security. You quite rightly talked about people who are actually making the wind turbines and making the equipment we use.
Delvins.
Look, I want to see that made by British people producing British energy for this British nation. And the sooner we do that, the better, which is why...
you see, that's the problem, isn't it? We're not doing it, and we haven't done it, and we won't be able to do it, especially if we don't make our own steel. Listen, I've got to go. Stephen Pound, really good to talk to you. I've got to bring in somebody else, but really lovely to talk to you. That's Stephen Pound, former Labour MP.